Hey everyone, I wanted to go over some new and exciting news that we got for Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak that's set to release later this summer on both the Nintendo Switch and on PC via Steam. And that's the fact that this past week we ended up getting two separate updates regarding Sunbreak from the official Twitter account in both Japanese and in English. Now, the one from the director Suzuki, which I usually tend to go over whenever they provide us some actual decent information, this week it wasn't necessarily all that important. They basically spoke about how the rendering for the Palicos, Palamute, and Malzeno amiibos were finalized. I'm going to be showing the image on screen right now. You're going to be able to see that. So they basically just went over that, and we've seen this before. Not necessarily anything new, and we still haven't necessarily seen the amiibos. So that's not a big surprise. What was interesting, however, is that Minato drawings. Now, these Minato drawings is something that Capcom has been doing on Twitter for, I believe, since the game originally launched back in March of last year, and now they're doing them for Sunbreak, essentially providing us with just some interesting ideas regarding what can actually you expect as Sunbreak is about to launch. And this week's post was actually posted last week in Japan, but they ended up posting it this week in English. And in the English one, it actually reads, which is pretty much the same one as the Japanese one. This is the most recently revealed monster, Luna Garen. It's super cool. It's a wolf covered in scales. We don't know much about it yet, but I've got top secret info about its attack patterns from a certain source. Minato was kind enough to illustrate it for us. And then we get to see the little silly images of essentially a Palico, a Palamute, and what's presumably to be Luna Garen. Now, previously in the past, these kind of like little silly drawings, people haven't necessarily paid any attention to them because that's just kind of like what they are. But retroactively, if you actually go back and look at the Rise ones before the game released, we were actually getting some interesting tidbits of information that you wouldn't necessarily consider as you are seeing those images because they are rather crude. And here what we're actually seeing is two separate things that I believe are going to be something interesting we should be considering for the future. First and foremost, you're actually going to see the Palico get on top of Luna Garen and essentially ride around them as if running out normally. Remember, there's two stances that they're showing in Luna Garen, a normal run and then a faster run. And interestingly enough, in that second faster run where Luna Garen seems to be kind of like hauling ass, you see the Palamute actually get the Palico on top of it, and the Palico is running on top of the Palamute. Now, this is why I think this is interesting. Never in the game, when you're actually out in the field, you're going to have a Palico riding on top of a Palamute. That simply just doesn't happen. However, you might have been confused thinking that it does because you've actually seen it in cutscenes. There's two specific cutscenes in the game that you actually have, like whenever you're just playing the story mode, where they're going to show your Palico on top of the Palamute. And there's actually a couple of scenes whenever you're doing a solo quest that you're going to have the Palico on top of the Palamute, basically as your hunter will begin to pet it. So that will only ever happen in very specific cutscenes. But whenever you are out on the field with a Palico and a Palamute buddy right next to you as you're hunting, you are never going to have your Palico get on top of the Palamute. Ever. They never engage with each other. The Palico will be doing his own attacks. The Palamute will be doing his own attacks, but you're never going to have them interact or basically like attack together. And another thing you're going to notice is, of course, like I mentioned before, the Palico is never going to get on top of a monster. That's not a move or an ability that they just simply have. They just don't do that in this game whatsoever. What you would have, and perhaps you have seen already, is that a Palamute does have the ability to get on top of a monster if they have the Chomper's equipment item equipped. So perhaps if you have those equipped, which are not necessarily all that good, so people will often switch to either the kunais or like I believe the like parasol or stuff like that. But the Chompers, I believe there's 2 or 3 different versions of them, and even the scrolls are way better than most of the weapons. If you have, however, the Chompers on your Palamute, you might see your Palamute actually bite onto a monster's side or bite into a monster's back and then hang on for a little bit, eventually detach from the monster, and then you're going to have the Chompers actually sticking up to the monster, doing a little bit of damage for a certain amount of time. Never will you actually see the Palico do that. Palicos just simply will toss their bombs, they will do their heals, they will do whatever they do, but they're never going to get on top of a monster. That's just simply not something that they have the ability to be able to do in Monster Hunter Rise as of right now. So I found it extremely interesting that they're showing a Palico on top of a monster, which again, not possible, and B, out in the field as the Luna Garen seems to be sped up and attacking a little bit faster perhaps, that you have now the Palico on top of the Palamute, perhaps finally having some sort of synchronization attack, perhaps an escape ability, something along those lines where they're now being able to like make best use of like presumably what would Capcom want you to having do as you're out in the field, having a Palico and a Palamute together at the same time. Remember that the meta right now simply calls for a status pair of dogs. You want to have two Palamutes that are status focused. They're going to do more damage. They're going to be able to do basically paralyze and stuff like, or poison to a monster. You mostly want paralyze, and that's about it. Those people that say, well, gathering Palicos are better to bring along for like the static or like maybe sometimes heals, it's good, but not as good if you're just simply like speed running, or you're doing like solo hunts and you just want free extra damage. You just want to have two dogs with you. That is just a better way to go about it. They're going to provide you with a better set of support, essentially doing more damage and still being able to do some sort of paralysis to the monster, where you're going to be able to have, an extra window of free time to be able to have, more damage. So perhaps this is Capcom's ways to balance the fact that Palicos have kind of fallen to the wayside, even though necessarily people don't really realize that once you unlock all the capture points, pretty much like all the little tents in every single one of the maps, you don't necessarily need to have a Palico to traverse. You can just fast travel to a point, wire bug 2 to 3 times to a certain location, that monster's going to be already there. There's a limited amount of places that like it's going to take you a little bit longer to get to from the campsite that you're going to be spawning on, but most of the time in just about every situation, it's just faster to just, again, teleport back to your like camp and then move through the wire bug to a special place where the monster is, and then you're going to be fine. Then actually getting on the Palamute and riding to that location as you're following the monster. Usually it's like faster to just fast travel and do that. So, but most people play with a Palamute to begin with, so that's not necessarily much of a surprise. That's not going to change. Perhaps Capcom is seeing the numbers and saying, we want to provide Palicos now a better chance, a better opportunity, as they have more agile abilities to be able to get on top of monsters, do different things, do different skills. And then if you decide to do solo hunts and you bring in a Palico and a Palamute together, now you're going to be able to have the ability to have extra, skill synchronization attacks or something that they do synergizing together as you're hunting with both of your buddies. But that's about all the information that I wanted to go over today. If you are brand new to my channel, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Hit the bell to receive notifications when the videos go up. And as always, thank you so much for watching. See ya.